Hello friends, Mandar here. I'm back with another video. Today we'll do a special topic for people who are considering going back to India from the United States. So some people have reached out to me in the light of the layoffs and things like that, or who are still far away from getting their green cards, that they would like to move back to India. So I thought I will make a video on outlining all the things that you should consider if you are considering moving back to India from the United States. Now this will apply to different people in a different way. Some people who are moving within 2 or 3 years, that is a different perspective than people who have been here for decades and now they are returning back to India. So I'll put my thoughts out there for your benefit. Watch this video until the end and let's get started. Now this is not particularly immigration topic or a financial advice, but these are my personal thoughts that I would like to share. I moved from India to United States to Canada, and Canada to United States back. So I have some experience in this area that I would like to share. Again, the disclaimer, I'm not an immigration lawyer or a financial advisor. So anything that I say on this video is just some general experience that I would like to share with my thoughts. Now, before we get started, if you look at the description, there are some affiliate links and you can get some discounts out of it. And channel will get a little bit of a commission. Also, if you want to get my personal opinion or if you want to reach out to me, there are two ways. One is through Patreon, where I can exchange text messages with you, or if you want to talk to me, I also have Calendly. So do check out those links in the description as well. Now recently, in the last couple of months, as you have seen, there have been a lot of layoffs going on in the tech sector. Now my first thing that comes to my mind is, when you are in the tech sector, such as these big tech companies such as Amazon and Google and Facebook, you have already proved your worth to the company. You already have some niche skills and experiences that are unique. But unfortunately, because of the situation, because of the economy, these companies are making layoffs because they had gone on a hiring spree during the pandemic time. In the last 2 or 3 years, they hired so many people that they don't need them anymore. So now they are correct sizing their organization by doing layoffs up to 10 to 15%. Now what this just mean is people who are on or already have their green cards or citizenship, they have lesser of an impact, although financially they are still at a loss. But these big tech companies are giving like 6 months of salary payout or severance payout, and also supporting them through their medical insurance and so on. So there are a lot of benefits. So it's not that you are out on the road right on the day one after the layoff. They really take care of you for a couple of months at least. But those who are on a non-immigrant visa such as H1 or L1, these people are the most impacted because they are on a timeline. So starting for their last day of the payroll on a company, their clock starts ticking to maintain their status on H1B. They have 60 days to get another job and to apply for a H1B transfer. Now, first thing I want to clarify before is, if the company is saying that they are going to support you through 60 days of immigration, that means that they are going to probably allow you to be on the payroll for those 60 days. Or in other case, they might only give you a severance which does not count towards that 60-day grace period. If you have any doubts on this particular topic, do reach out to me and I'll give you my perspective. Now coming back to the situation where people might want to consider going out of United States, or they are done with this waiting of their green card for years and years, and they are done with this being attached to the company and being a bonded labor kind of thing. Some people are done with it and they want to move out of the United States. Some of those people are considering Canada as an option, which I highly recommend, and I have made specific videos for moving from US to Canada. Do check them out. There is a good pathway for you if you are in the tech sector to either move through your current job or to find a new job in Canada. And Canadian immigration process is much more friendlier than the United States. So that's something that you want to consider. But the other group of people are who really want to go back to their home country. Say for instance, in this case, we are looking at people who are returning to India. So these people have been here in the United States for a very long time. They may have been working on H1B visa or H4 EAD or so on and so forth, and they have probably changed a couple of companies. They also have been here long enough to buy their homes and cars and things like that. So they have their roots firmed in the United States. They also may have kids who were born in the United States who are now US citizens, but the kids cannot sponsor them until they turn 21 years of age. So some of these people are considering moving back to India. And India, as you know, is flourishing, has a lot of great jobs, and the lifestyle in India is also improved very much so compared to 20 years back. So here are a couple of things that you might want to consider before making a decision to move back from United States to India. First of all, do have a family conversation. So obviously you and your spouse or husband and wife can make an informed decision and make a collective decision of moving back to India, because it's a big one. The second thing is also talk to your children. Your children may be very little and they may not know what's going on, and so they may be okay. If they are in middle school or high school, it might impact them a lot, because school system in United States is very different from that in India. Talk to them, see if they are open to this idea, see if they are open to moving to a new country which they may or may not have seen so far, and if they will be comfortable settling into the school system in India, because that will be a big impact to them. They may also have a lot of friends over here, and that might make their decision very difficult. So once you are past that, there are a couple of other important things before even you start moving to India. Now another important thing is your perspective. Now you know how things are in India, but you may have come to United States like decades back, like 15 or 20 years back. You may still be waiting for your green card. Things have changed a lot in India. If you think you'll still get a 5 rupees cup of tea, 5 or 10 rupees cup of tea, that's not the case anymore. You will at least spend $50 to $80 on a cup of tea, depending on where you are in India. That is just to give you a small perspective about how things have changed, how much expensive they have gotten. So the dollar that you think would have stretched too far, say 10 to 20 years back, is not going to stretch that much further if you go now, because of the inflation situation in India. Now another point is, plan out well in advance. You want to give yourself at least 3 months, if not 6 months, to prepare yourself to go back to India, because there are a lot of things to consider. One is your mindset. The rules and regulations are very different. Consider that it might take you a year or two to even get settled in India. Although you are born and brought up in India, things are very different here. And now that you have lived in the United States for 15 years, it may not be that easy for you to fit in back in India. So consider that. Another most important thing is, do you have enough money to take back to India to settle in? Because as I was giving, in India, inflation is very high. Things have gotten very expensive compared to what you may have seen a decade back. Houses have become very expensive in big cities like Mumbai, Pune, Delhi. So do you have enough money to settle back in India? Because if you don't already have a flat, you'll need to purchase a flat, or you will need to purchase a vehicle. You may need 2 vehicles for you and your wife. So are you able to afford all that? And do you have enough savings to take back from United States to India? So that is an important aspect to consider. Do you have enough money to move back? Yes. Another thing is, here in the United States, you have health insurance, almost compulsory, through your employer or by yourself. So your health costs are generally covered in the United States, although you are paying a very high premium for it. But back in India, it's not very common to have health insurance, although IT companies and tech companies are now sponsoring health insurance for their employees in India as well. So make sure that you have enough insurance if you have to buy it yourself, even before you reach India. That might be a good idea, because you don't want to be surprised once you land there and the insurance company is saying that you have a pre-existing condition and we will not cover you. So that is the last thing you want to hear. So make sure that you buy an insurance well in advance, even before moving in, so that you have an idea of what are the premiums and what to expect. Now once you go to India, you will not be taxed for about 2 years. That's the way I understand it. This concept gives you about 2 years to settle in before taxing you on anything that you bring back to India. Now you may have your NRE, NRO accounts that have established because you are officially NRI, not living in India. Now once you go back to India, you will have to consider transferring or converting those accounts to resident account, because it may not be legal for you to maintain those NRE and NRO account if you start living in India as a resident. Now repatriation of the money, how can you transfer your money to India? There is a limit every year. I think it's a $14,000 limit that you can transfer from United States to India, and you will not be taxed. Or beyond that, there is something called a gift tax. Now FEMA laws may apply for higher amounts when you are considering $500,000 or $1 million to transfer from United States to India. and you can also carry $10,000 along with you cash, but you will have to declare that at the customs. Now you want to also consider there is something called RFC account, which will allow you to hold your US dollars in India in the Indian banks without being taxed, and at a later date you may be able to convert it from dollars to rupees when the conversion rate is a little bit favorable in your side. Now to do all this, make sure you have a good chartered accountant hired in India, because they know the latest and the greatest tax laws, and they will save you from the headache during the transfer of funds process, paying taxes, changing of accounts, the money that you bring from disposal of your properties in the United States, what happens to those, how you can invest in different areas in India. All that can be done through a chartered accountant, and I will highly recommend you to hire a good chartered accountant before starting this process. Now another important aspect even before you leave United States is if you have a house. So say for instance you have lived here for 10, 15, 20 years and you have a house for yourself. Now do you sell it right away? Now the most obvious answer is going to be yes, you want to sell it right away. But is it a good time for you to sell? Because if the markets are trending downwards, if the cost of home depending on where you live is lower than what you bought or is lower than what you were expecting, then it might not be a good idea to sell it right away. You might want to consider renting it out for a couple of years. So even if you are not residing in the United States, if you have a property management or if you have friends or relatives who can look at it, you might want to consider renting it out and then selling it at a later date when the prices come back. So this way you are not panic selling and you are not incurring losses on your biggest investment. So that is one thing that I really want to emphasize. So don't panic sell your home. Do consider all these aspects. Now second thing is your cars. Your cars is a different story. Your car is a depreciating asset, and I would highly recommend if you are moving back to India, sell off your cars and get rid of them. Don't just go to the dealership and trade them in. Try to sell them yourself in the open market, because that way you will get more cash for your cars. Household stuff, that is also another thing. Get rid of most of the household stuff, unless you have a company who is transferring you from US to India and they are willing to take all the expenses of shipping all your household stuff from US to India. In that case, you might want to keep it. Again, you might also want to consider what is the kind of home you are going to live in India, and is it big enough to accommodate all those household items. If none of these things apply, it's in your best interest to sell everything on Craigslist or any other local site and get rid of all of your household stuff. Now other things, bank accounts and savings accounts and CDs. Now this is up to you. If I were you, I would consolidate them, because it's better to manage lesser number of accounts, maybe one or two, one checking, one saving, just to make sure that you have that open in the United States. Your CDs, you want to keep them running until they mature. Once they mature, you can withdraw that in your savings account and then transfer it back to India. So that is my opinion. Now do transfer it within 2 years if you can. If not, you might have to declare it and you might have to pay taxes in India. Again, consult a chartered accountant. When is the right time for you to transfer all that savings from the United States to India? Now stocks, bonds and retirement savings accounts such as 401k. Now that is a different story. What I would suggest is, if you can leave it as it is in the United States. It's not going to be impacted because of your decision to move to India, because those will remain active. They will continue to be invested and continue to generate you income. So stocks, bonds, I would say it's all up to you. You can even operate it online from India, so there is not going to be any issue with that. Now again, if you are incurring some capital gains, then you will continue to pay US taxes on it. So if you have stocks, bonds, IRAs and all, if you sell any of your 401k and all, if you sell your stocks and bonds, you might incur capital gains and you might have to pay taxes on it. So consult a financial advisor in that case. In many cases, it might just be better to leave those as it is until a future date when you make up your mind whether you are staying long enough in India or coming back to United States. Now another thing is your driver's license and passport. So now you have been outside of India and you may not have your driver's license. So that is another thing that you will need immediately after you go to India. Now India has Uber and Ola and other things But if you are moving back with your family and if you are buying a car back in India, you will immediately need a driver's license. So that is one of the priority things that you will need to do. Also, Aadhaar card and PAN card number and all those things will go along with it. You will need to apply them as soon as you land in India. Another thing is your passport. If you are still an Indian citizen, which might be the case, then it's easier for you because you still have your Indian passport. But in the rare scenario, if people who are also on green card or US citizen, if they are moving back to India, then they might want to consider how they can live in India on OCI. But that may not be an issue for majority of people moving to India. Now, your kids' education, if you have kids in middle school or high school, it is very important to find a good school back in India, because once you move back, they will have a biggest transition even more than you, because they will have to adapt to the new system of education in India and they may not be ready for it. If you are moving back when your kids are little, that is an ideal situation. But if you have kids that are in middle school or higher, it will be a little bit difficult for them to adjust, as you all know. Now, India also has that quota system. If they are not Indian citizens, they may have to go through a quota to get admissions in schools and colleges. So that is something to consider as well. Now, about your employer. So if you are moving back to India through your same employer, do make sure that you notify your employer, because it is absolutely critical. Now, employer has obligations. Don't just assume that you, since nowadays we are all remote working, that you can just go to India and continue to work and incur salary in the United States. That's not that easy, because your employer has obligation to pay taxes to the government or withhold your taxes for the place where you are residing. So if you are not in United States and if you are in India, it is a tricky situation for the employer. So make sure that you have your discussion with your employer whether they will allow you to work from India. If you need more information on this topic, I will make a separate video. Do let me know or reach out to me and I'll give you my perspective. Because if you don't do it carefully, if you just move back to India and think that everything is going to be fine working for your employer in the US, think again, because employer has obligations, tax obligations to the government. They may be violating the federal and state laws by continuing to let you work from India. So it's in best interest for you to talk to your employer about your situation. Now, regarding the taxes, it is a little bit tricky. If you are still working for a US employer and staying in India, then you have tax obligations in US. In India, it may not be applicable. The ball has dropped, the confetti has been cleared up. It's time to focus once again. The new year brings new time to recalibrate, but we are still dealing with the same issues. The traditional stock bond portfolio had its worst performance since 2008 crisis, and the experts at major banks think that this could be just the beginning. The stock market is still stagnant, the inflation is still raging, and many investors are still scrambling, but not the Masterworks investors. Recently, a member earned over $65,000 from his investment. And I will let you in on a secret. He would have never invested in this asset before knowing about Masterworks. And it's not just one user. Masterworks' 3 most recent exits delivered returns of 10%, 13% and 35% in just last 2 months. See, with Masterworks, you can invest in SEC qualified offerings of legendary artwork for a fraction of the art's whole cost. Now, I'm no art expert and I'm not a millionaire, but Morgan Stanley says assets like art with low correlation to the stock market are becoming more popular. Over 600,000 people have signed up so far, and with the market looking shaky for the foreseeable future, demand is growing. Offerings have even sold out in under an hour, but my subscribers can get priority access at the link in the description. So check out the link in the description for Masterworks and get the priority access through Wisdom Trends link. Now let's continue with our topic. Check out those rules again. But once you move to a company in India, again, you will need to pay all the taxes, relevant taxes in India. But also if you have retirement savings and other savings accounts, or if you have any capital gains in the United States, you will continue to file US tax returns as well. So all in all, it is very important decision for you to make, and you might want to consider all these aspects along with your family before you make a decision to move back to India. Make sure you have enough time to consider all these things, and you can actually run it as a project because it is indeed a big project for you to move from one country to another. So I hope these pointers help you a little bit to consider if you are moving back to India. And if I have missed any other points, do let me know in the comment section below. So I hope you like the content of this video. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.